Next speaker is Paul Murphy, former member of the European Parliament, now member of the Dáil.
Thanks a lot, Vincent. I'm not speaking on behalf of ISIS this evening. Personally, it's really excellent to have so many people coming here to debate a question about the EU, and I think tribute has to be paid to Ballyhay Says No for their work they have done over 50 years. In many senses, in terms of the name, but also in other aspects, that Ballyhay Says No anticipated and prefigured the kind of social movement that we have happening right across the country now, focused on the question of water charges, yes, but with a broader view about really trying to change our society. In terms of the EU, friend or foe, I will be black and white, foe. Foe from the point of view of, not foe from the point of view of Ireland, as in all of Ireland, and Ireland that includes Dennis O'Brien, Tony O'Reilly, etc. But a foe from the point of view of the 99% in Ireland, working people, young people, unemployed people, pensioners, small farmers, and a foe from the point of view of the 99% right across Europe. I don't think there was some social Europe ideal in the past that we need to get back to. I think if you go and look at it, from the very foundations of the EU is a big business club set up to facilitate capital across Europe. The character of the EU as a project of the elite has become clearer in the course of the crisis for people, has become more open, and the interest they serve has shifted from being manufacturing capital in Europe to being finance capital in Europe, the banks, bondholders, etc. But I think fundamentally the EU is doing what the EU was set up to do. And there's loads of examples, which obviously we could go on all night about. I'm not going to talk about the banking debt because I think everyone knows about that, and I agree that that is central. And we could talk about militarisation. We could talk about TTIP and the free trade agenda in terms of CETA.
We could talk about oil.
We could talk about oil.
The oil that belongs to this country.
We could talk about fracking. We could talk about a lot of things. What I want to talk about in the 3 minutes I have remaining is about democratic rights, right? Because I think it's an unspoken, it's not spoken about enough of how, in the course of the crisis, democratic rights in the European Union have been undermined substantially. We've seen a shock doctrine in terms of economic policy, using the shock of the crisis to embed a model of neoliberal capitalism, Thatcherite capitalism, austerity-driven capitalism. But we've also seen the same in the political sphere, where there's been a very conscious attempt to shift political power away from elected institutions who can come under power from people to unelected institutions. And that's happened in a range of different ways. One is the technocratization of economic policy making, by which I mean to say that basically they imply, particularly in the media, that economic policy is no longer really a political question. It's no longer really a debate between left and right, between Thatcherites, Keynesians and socialists. Instead, it's a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of responsible or irresponsible. And that's kind of an ideological onslaught that has been happening. And then built on top of that is the writing into law of austerity, the writing into law of neoliberal right-wing policies. And that's what the six-pack, the two-pack, the fiscal treaty, that's what they're about. They're about strengthening the Stability and Growth Pact targets, which are neoliberal, right-wing economic ideas. Not every economist would agree with them. Writing even harder ones in with them and saying that any country that breaks those targets can be fined. And to say, in the example of the fiscal treaty, to say that we need binding rules of permanent force and character to make sure that these things are done. And it's about shifting power away from bodies that can be put under pressure. I don't have any illusions in the Irish government, but you can see over the past 2 months they've been put under pressure on the question of the water charges. And so they're shifting power more and more from elected governments to unelected bodies like the European Commission, and in particular the European Central Bank. And they're also giving those bodies like the Commission the power to fine member states for not implementing enough austerity as like a counterweight, because they know they're going to come under pressure from below. The ECB letters are an extreme example of that. They're ransom notes to the Italian government, to the Irish government, by what is supposedly an independent central bank. And at its height, in the course of the crisis, this reached the stage, which we don't talk about enough, that silent coups were carried out in Italy and in Greece, led by the ECB. Elected governments were collapsed and replaced by governments made up of bankers with a mandate for bankers ruling in the interest of the markets. That's what happened in 2 countries within the European Union. Even though I would disagree with both of those governments, and they were elected and they were gotten rid of. Just the last point is that I think the EU is a foe in the sense of the Commission, the leading bodies, the institutions, etc. But I do think it's a foe of the 99%, and our friends right across Europe are the 99%. And I think the task in terms of changing Europe, of building a Europe that works for the millions rather than the millionaires, is to reach out to those people who are our friends and have a coordinated battle on things like water charges, on things like banking debt, on what kind of society we want. Thanks.
Marcus Howard, test 1, 2, 3.